friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we are continuing our study of the book of Genesis with related portions and other texts such as Jasher and Jubilees and the Targums and the writings of Abraham and all sorts of other texts we may decide to take a look at. And I'm happy to be joined once again by my friend and co-host, Zen Garcia. Zen, are you there, sir?
I am, brother. It's a pleasure to be here with you and the listening audience, and looking forward to further discourse.
Yeah, right on. How's your week been?
Pretty good. I've just been finishing up, just with the Dragon Lords and the pre-Adamic antediluvian world books and the calendar, and then after that I'm take a little break and then start with the movie scripts. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I've been looking into the same technology. I don't know if you've been able to catch The Mandalorian. Have you ever seen any of the episodes of The Mandalorian yet?
I've seen the first series, but I haven't seen the second season yet.
Yeah, so that was shot on what's called a volume, and it's basically a large warehouse that has a very big LCD monitor, like it covers one whole wall and the ceiling. So it's just massive LED screens, and they create all the environments in CGI and put them behind the actors on TV. So instead of like rear screen projection, like old school, where they just project it onto a screen, from behind, like we do at conferences sometimes, this is actually piping video into, essentially huge TV monitors.
Wow.
That are very high resolution. So you have the actors on the stage, but they're just on one location in one big warehouse. And so they have props that they interact with and some, practical things that are built on the set. But everything else is CGI, and it's rigged through, I believe they're using Unreal Engine, and the camera is linked to Unreal Engine. So in real life, when you move, you get parallax, right? When you're moving side to side or what have you. And so the software automatically compensates for that. And so it has the software in the background moves the way it would normally move if you were actually on location. So it's just an amazing way to do your entire production in one facility. Anyway, I say all that to say that, first of all, they've really pioneered this technology, but there are people, I've been watching videos the last few days that, everybody's stuck in lockdown. So, people are getting creative. And I saw a video the last couple of days. I've been watching this guy's channel. He was one of the pioneers of the technology that helped develop it. And he's like, I'm stuck at home and I'm trying to figure a way to make a mini volume in my basement to be able to do the same types of thing we're doing in big production, but perfect it for indie filmmakers.
That's amazing.
Which is like, I'm over here raising my hand. That's me.
Right.
So, the price is going to be pretty hefty, especially right now. A lot of it's new, but,
right.
With time, stuff just gets better, faster, and cheaper.
Right.
That I'm getting real excited because this guy showed some of the stuff that he was able to do in his basement. And he wasn't using big screen TVs. He was using just a green screen and still using the same technology, just with green screen. So you got an extra step in there because you have to do the keying. But the beauty of what they're doing with The Mandalorian is, with the background being right there on video and being as high resolution and bright as it is, they don't have to light the set. The volume lights the set with the natural lighting of whatever the scene is that they created.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah, with the character Mandalorian, he's wearing highly reflective armor, which would be a nightmare on green or blue screen because you'd have to key out the green and blue reflections and then put artificial reflections.
Right.
But with this volume thing, his suit just reflects what's on the TV, which is the background, just like it would in real life. So, needless to say, man, I've been like rejuvenated with new creative juices going crazy over here, thinking, oh man,
not bad potential, huh?
Yeah, the potential just to get a let's say like a basketball court, gymnasium size space somewhere, and build out a volume like that as the technology gets cheaper and better. And, I'm getting real excited about that. So
yeah, it brings that world into accessibility, really, for people that are trying to do it on in a different manner, and so yeah, there's a lot of beneficial things coming out of this crazy lockdown. Everybody stay at home, social distancing, secure yourself from everybody else, don't interact with anybody kind of world. It's just crazy.
Craziness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I took a quick look at where we left off, and I think it might be good to go back to Jubilees and get us caught up, because we're a little behind in Jubilees right now.
Sounds good.
I think only one chapter should get us caught up in Jubilees, though. I just looked at it real quick. So I'm ready to jump in if you are.
Yep, I am.
All right, let's go over to Jubilees, chapter 16. Okay, and on the new moon of the 4th month, we appeared unto Abraham at the oak of Mamre, and we talked with him, and we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah his wife. And Sarah laughed, for she heard that we had spoken these words with Abraham, and we admonished her, and she became afraid and denied that she had laughed on account of the words. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets, i.e. Isaac, and that when we returned to her at a set time, she would have conceived a son. And in this month, the Lord executed his judgments on Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and all the region of the Jordan, and he burned them with fire and brimstone and destroyed them until this day, even as I have declared that unto thee all these works, that they are wicked and sinners exceedingly, and that they defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh and uncleanness on the earth. And in like manner, God will execute judgment on the places where they have done according to the uncleanness of the Sodomites, like unto the judgment of Sodom. But Lot we saved, for God remembered Abraham and sent him out from the midst of the overthrow. And he and his daughters committed sin upon the earth, such as had not been on earth since the days of Adam until this time, for the man lay with his daughters. And behold, it was commanded and engraven concerning all his seed on the heavenly tablets, to remove them and root them out, and to execute judgment upon them like the judgment of Sodom, and to leave no seed of the man on earth on the day of condemnation. And in this month, Abraham moved from Hebron and departed and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur in the mountains of Gerar. And in the middle of the 5th month, he moved from thence and dwelt at the well of the oath. And in the middle of the 6th month, the Lord visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time of which the Lord had spoken to Abraham, on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Isaac was born. Oh, he was born on first fruits. That's cool. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant, which is ordained forever. And in the 6th year of the 4th week, we came to Abraham to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him as we had told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month and found Sarah with child before us, and we blessed him and announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should begat 6 sons more. Huh? Is this talking about Abraham or Isaac? And should see them before he died, but that in Isaac should his should Isaac but in Isaac should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be Gentiles and be reckoned with the Gentiles. From the sons of Isaac one should become a holy seed, and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles, for he should become the portion of the Most High. And all his seed had fallen into the possession of God, that it should be unto the Lord a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a kingdom and priests and a holy nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And he built there an altar to the Lord who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a festival of joy in this month, 7 days, near the altar, which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival. And he was the first to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth. And during these 7 days, he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And as a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, 7 he-goats, and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings, and he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto the Lord for a sweet-smelling savor. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense and galbanum and stacte and nard and myrrh and spice and custom. All these 7 he offered, crushed, mixed together in equal parts and pure. And he celebrated this feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart and with all his soul, he and all those who were in his house, and there was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. And he blessed his Creator, who had created him in this generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed, so that it should become like him who had made all things. And he blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of this festival the festival of the Lord, a joy acceptable to the Most High God. And he blessed him forever, and all his seed after him throughout all the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season, according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. For this reason, it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Israel, that they shall celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days with joy in the 7th month, acceptable before the Lord, a statute forever throughout the generations every year. And to this there is no limit of days, for it is ordained forever regarding Israel, that they should celebrate it and dwell in booths and set wreaths upon their heads and take leafy boughs and willows from the brook. And Abraham took branches of palm trees and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going round the altar with the branches 7 times a day in the morning, he praised and gave thanks to his God for all things in joy. Wow, I didn't know that. That was the origin of Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
You know, people want to talk about, legalism, right? Don't be a Judahite. You're such a legalist. Like, nobody considered celebrating Christmas and Easter as legalistic. So why, especially when it comes to this particular festival, this is one that comes with the commandment to have fun. I know,
right.
No, it's so horrible. This horrible God was. and by the way, use your tithe money to do it. Ooh. Tell that to your good Baptist friends. Yeah, that's such a horrible thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I command you to have fun.
Right, hang out with all your friends and on the full moon, and hang out around the fire.
So we've talked about before how all the feasts had been there from the beginning, and the angels are talking about these were on heavenly tablets. So obviously they knew it on the heavenly tablets that the day would come when the Feast of Tabernacles would officially begin. We see evidence, though, that Adam and Eve even were doing at least some of the other feasts. Right.
Yeah. Especially we know Passover, because that's when that Adam even built the altar, and even when he made offering to the Most High, it was on Passover, according to the primary Adamic literature, and that when Cain and Abel both went and brought forth offering, it was also on Passover. So,
and we see that like the flood began. What is it? Does it begin on trumpets? I forget. Does it begin in the 7th month?
Yeah, I believe it is on trumpets. Yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, there's certainly evidence, as we've seen in many different texts, that the feasts have always been. They didn't just originate in Leviticus 23, but this is the first time I actually saw one being like initiated, like this, and this being the celebration for Isaac at that, the first to be officially circumcised on the 8th day.
Right. Yeah, I had seen somewhere else that he was born on the 15th of Nisan, but here it says the 16th of Nisan. So that's very interesting. But I did pull up a text that was kind of about the things we've been reading on Abraham, and it mentions that even the destruction of Sodom and all that began on the 15th of Nisan too, which is interesting. So whenever you want, I can read this. This is a different text that I hadn't been reading from, and it brings up some interesting things.
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you what. Let me go ahead and read Genesis 19 first.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll do the Targum after.
That gets us into the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then we can, because Jubilees didn't really, it's like, oh yeah, and this was the same time that he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, we didn't get much in Jubilees for that. Right. So it just jumps ahead to the birth of Isaac and the celebration and whatnot. So I'll read Genesis 19. That'll probably take us to the break, and then you can jump in with whatever you want afterwards.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so Genesis 19. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold, now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. And before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be judged. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand, and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great. So they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides, son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxed great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, and the Lord being merciful unto them. And they brought him forth, and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto them, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Then the Lord rained down upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the city went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in the which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. So that's Genesis 19. I never really noticed before. If I did, I had forgotten. But they were apparently engaged. The
daughters.
Yeah, I don't know how I've said that before, but he tried to explain everything, and the sons-in-law, right? It's in verse 12, and the men said unto Lot, Hast thou any besides son-in-law, sons, blah blah blah? And Lot went and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters. But his daughters hadn't laid with him yet, so they must have been just engaged, I guess. Mm-hmm. Which that's kind of like, that's always tripped me out. He's like, yeah, here, take my daughters. Of course,
right? Yeah.
I think the rabbis made commentary on that quite a bit, saying that he knew they were gay and they didn't want to have anything to do with his daughters. So, it's still a rude thing to do, but
yeah, to offer up your innocent daughters like that to a crowd of frenzied, sex-crazed individuals.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I mean, we see in Scripture that Lot was a righteous man, so
right,
something more to it than what we just look at here, because that doesn't seem righteous to me.
Right. Yeah, very, very interesting. And that's why reading these stories again and examining these manuscripts, these texts, we see things that we hadn't remembered, examining the new things. So it's good that we're doing this and reviewing everything and bringing it all together in one story.
Yeah, it is kind of fun because he's like, I don't want to go to the mountain. I'm going to die there. And so he's like, let me go to this little town. And I guess that Zoar, I think Zoar means little town or something. It was named Zoar, I think, after that. But and then after everything's destroyed, he goes into the mountain anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's kind of crazy. And we got about a minute before we go to break here, but I think what may have happened here is if they were familiar with the two prophecies that the earth would be destroyed by water and by fire.
Right.
This isn't too long. It's what 400 years ish or so after the flood. So they would have been, certainly aware of the destruction by water, and they like to them, their whole world had just been destroyed by fire.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, God, I can't even imagine, just the destruction raining down from heavens and destroying not only all the cities, but it says the entire plain.
Yeah, everything.
And so, yeah, that's like Armageddon for sure.
So we're not told how old the daughters are here, but presumably they're fairly young of age, probably teenagers. They would have been like, well, their mentality probably was like, this was it. This was the destruction by fire.
Right.
And Dad's the only male left.
Right.
This is our 4-week emergency supply food from My Patriot Supply, our new sponsor. So today we're going to unbox it and show you what they sent us. We're facing an uncertain future, my family. The next few weeks will set the tone for the next 4 years. Do you really want to be caught unprepared if things suddenly take a turn for the worst? Well, you don't have to. You can start preparing today so you have enough emergency food, water, and other essentials on hand at all times, no matter what happens. It's best to have at least a 1-month supply of food and water for everyone in your household. You want long-term storage food that lasts up to 25 years, so it's ready whenever you need it. That's why we personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the go-to leaders for emergency preparedness, and they're the best source my family uses and trusts for our preparedness plan, and you should too. Right now, save $100 off a full 4-week supply of nutritious meals that supply 2,000 calories a day, delivered discreetly to your home. Saving $100 isn't possible to pass up, especially now. So go to preparewithzengarcia.com and get ready now. That's preparewithzengarcia.com. There's no time to lose. As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we are continuing our study of the book of Genesis, covering this time Genesis 19. I looked during the break, and there's just a few verses left in Jasher chapter 19 that I stopped short of in the last podcast. So I want to go ahead and wrap that up so that would get Jasher 19 out of the way, and then we're wide open for anything else we want to look at here. All right, let me switch this over and finish up Jasher chapter 19. I left off in verse 46, but I'll go ahead and read it one more time and then continue. And the angels rose up from the door of Abraham's tent after they had eaten and drunk, and they reached Sodom in the evening. And Lot was then sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when he saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed down to the ground. And he pressed them greatly and brought them into his house, and he gave them victuals, which they ate. And they abode all night in his house. And the angels said to Lot, Arise, go forth from this place, thou and all belonging to thee, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of this city, for the Lord will destroy this place. And the angels laid hold upon the hand of Lot, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hands of his children, and all belonging to him. And they brought him forth, and set him without the cities. And they said to Lot, Escape for thy life. And he fled, and all belonging to him. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah and upon all the cities brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew these cities, all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. And Ado, the wife of Lot, looked back to see the destruction of the cities. And for her compassion was moved on account of her daughters who remained in Sodom, for they did not go with her. And when she looked back, she became a pillar of salt, and it is yet in that place unto this day. I'm going to highlight this in case I forget. And the oxen, which stood in that place daily, licked up the salt to the extremities of their feet, and in the morning it would spring forth afresh, and they again licked it up unto this day. And Lot and two of his daughters that remained with him fled and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And they remained there for some time. And Abraham rose up early in the morning to see what had been done to the cities of Sodom. And he looked and beheld the smoke of the cities going up like the smoke of a furnace. And Lot and his two daughters remained in the cave, and they made their father drink wine, and they lay with him. For they said there was no man upon earth that could raise up seed from them, for they thought that the whole earth was destroyed. And they lay with their father, and they conceived and bare sons, and the firstborn called the name of her son Moab, saying, From my father did I conceive him, he is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger also called her son Ben-Ammi, which is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. And after this, Lot and his two daughters went away from there, and he dwelt on the other side of the Jordan with his two daughters and their sons. And the sons of Lot grew up, and they went and took themselves wives from the land of Canaan, and they begat children, and they were fruitful and multiplied. So we got some extra insight here, just a little bit in Jasher. So, okay, so right before the break, we're talking about, they probably were aware of the two prophecies, that the earth was destroyed once by flood of water and once by fire. And like you were saying right before we went to the break, I mean, everything around them was being lit up from fiery hailstones coming down from above. They thought, and Jasher tells you point blank, they thought this was the end of the world. Right. So it explains their rationale. And I use this story to explain my thesis regarding how the Nephilim returned after the flooding, what was going on with Ham and his mother. That why many people think we're the uncovering the nakedness of the father. In the book of Leviticus tells you that's an idiom. It's a phrase that means messing around with your mother. Right. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why, if that's the case, if it is true that Ham messed around with his mother, why would he do that? And my speculation was that the wives were tainted, and Canaan being among the first that were born, may have had the attributes of the Nephilim that we see later, because his offspring did. They had 6 fingers, 6 toes, double rows of teeth and stuff like that. So it would have been pretty obvious the three sons of Noah were around for about 100 years before the flood, so they saw what was on the other side of the flood. And if he perceived, oh man, here we go, my wife's popping out Nephilim, we know mom's good, so if this is all that's left, and my brothers got, they were sisters, so if my brothers married the sisters of my wife, and if she's popping out Nephilim, well, maybe my only choice is mom. The rationale would be the same if that's true. It's just a theory, as what we see here, with the daughters. And then speaking of Nephilim, we just see that they, their children, they start going off and marrying Canaanites.
Right. Yeah, I think that the precedence for sleeping with your mother was something that was passed down in that particular line too, because when Nimrod was said to have taken his mother as wife, and then we see that Pharaoh, other pharaohs have also done that, and that there's this same kind of it's passed down and celebrated for people of this particular line, the Canaanite line, the children of Cain. For whatever reason, they do that. They take on, and even there's the story, I forget, of he killed his father, and then ended up marrying his mother. It's a Greek story. I forget the individual, but real famous person as well. But these kind of things were passed down through this lineage, and so that could be something that came to bear as well.
Well, I used to think, well, that's pretty. That's a strange deal, for how drunk do you have to be not to know that you're
yeah
on with your daughters? That's whatever. But so you have this incestuous relationship that produces sons, and then these sons grow up and they go marry Canaanites. So it's no wonder why much later Yahuwah's like, yeah, no, Moabites aren't going to be hanging out in the temple.
Right.
Although we get to Ruth and get some interesting things that take place much later.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. When we get there, I'll actually bring some interesting insight into those stories as well.
Cool. This is the first I saw that they went to the cave of Adullam. I didn't catch that before, that the Lot and his two daughters went to the cave of Adullam. That sounds familiar to me, but I can't remember what else took place in the cave of Adullam. Can you?
Right, no. But I do remember that as far as what you had read, it stating that Lot's wife had other daughters, so perhaps some of them wouldn't leave with the family. And
Edo. Yeah. Ado had, so maybe there were other daughters. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and then the other thing is that, and I don't remember exactly which story. It could be the Legends of the Jews. I'll look it up. But it tells the story of how the reason Lot's wife was punished, and she her family was from Sodom, and she had connections with the judges and the people that were I guess the rulers in that town. And when Lot took the angels in, she was the one that went and told them where they were. And so all the people came and pounding on the door to get access to the angels. It was because of her. And so the judgment would be for her betraying Lot and her family, was that she would be turned into a pillar of salt. So there's a background story to all of that as well.
Yeah, so maybe the daughters that Ado went back to turned back for, maybe they were the ones that were married.
Could very well be. Yeah, because why wouldn't they consummate the marriage, after being married? Yeah, true that. Mm.
Yeah, so I wonder, maybe the Targums get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll read that now.
I just did a quick search on Bible Gateway for Adullam, and that's what I remembered. King David went and hid in the cave of Adullam.
Ah, is that where the spider weaved its web?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's because it was when he hid in that cave. God used a spider to weave a web, and when they came to it, they saw that the web was unbroken, so they didn't enter therein to look for David.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
This that's in 1 Samuel 22 and 23. Talking about him hiding out in the cave of Adullam.
That's pretty cool. How things like that keep coming back up,
Yeah, there's probably something to it there. I mean, that's an interesting connection, and the fact that it was known as the cave of Adullam. Although you wonder if Jasher it was written in the time of Moses and Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking back at that event because I don't know.
Right, yeah, because David was way before.
But I don't know if anybody named Adullam up to this point. So, why would the cave be named the cave of Adullam? I mean,
what does Adullam mean?
I could look that up. I mean, we don't have the names of everybody ever born, after the flood. So, I mean, it could have been anybody really.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware. It could be, but I'm not aware of anybody that descended from any of the biblical patriarchs with that name. Are you?
No.
Adullam, a testimony to them. That's what the name means. The name means a testimony to them. The cave of a testimony to them. I don't know.
I don't know.
All right, that's all I had. So, yeah, man, whatever you want to read.
All right. I'll do the Targum here first, and then I'll read the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets.
Cool.
And then we can go into some of the other ones. 2 angels came to Sodom at the evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot saw and rose up to meet them from the gate of the tabernacle, and he bowed his face to the ground and said, I beg now, my lords, turn now hither and enter the house of your servant and lodge and wash your feet, and you will arise and proceed on your way. And they said to him, No, for in the streets we will lodge at Jerusalem. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and he saw them, and ran, saluted them, and bowed with his face to the ground. And wash your feet, and wash you in the morning, and go to your tents in peace. And they said to him, No, for in the open place of the city we will lodge. And he persuaded them earnestly, and they turned aside to be with him. And they entered his house, and he made a repast and prepared unleavened cakes. And it seemed to him as if they did eat Jerusalem, and it appeared as if they ate and drank. They had not yet lain down when the wicked men of the city, the men of Sodom, came round upon the house, from the youth to the old man, all the people throughout. And they cried to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who entered with thee tonight? Bring them out to us, and we will lie with them. And Lot went out to them to the gate, and shut the door after him. And he said, I pray, my brethren, do not thus wickedly. Behold now, I have 2 daughters, who have had no dealing with a man. I would now bring even them out to you, to do to them as is meet before you, rather than you should do evil to these men, because they have entered in to lodge under the shadow of my roof. Jerusalem. And Lot said to them, Wait here a little till we have besought mercy before the Lord, who have not known dealing with man. And they said, Give up this. And they said, Did not this come alone to sojourn among us? And behold, he is making himself a judge, and judging the whole of us. But now we will do worse to thee than to them. And they prevailed against the man, against Lot greatly, and came near to shatter the door. And the men stretched forth their hands and brought Lot unto them in the house and shut the door. But the men who were at the gate of the house, they struck with the suffusion of the eyes, from the young to the old, and they waited wearied themselves to find the gate. Jerusalem with blindness. And the men said to Lot, Hast thou yet in this city kinsman or brother? Thy sons-in-law, thy sons, and thy daughters, take forth from the place, for the city of it before the Lord is great, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went forth and spake with his sons-in-law, who had taken his daughters, and said, Arise, come forth from this place, for the Lord destroyeth the city. But the word was as a wonder, and he as a man ranting in the eyes of his sons-in-law. And at the time that the morning was about to uprise, the angels were urgent upon Lot, saying, Up, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, who are with you, lest you perish in the condemnation of the inhabitants of the city. So it seems like the other 2 weren't persuaded with the sons-in-law.
Well, we keep seeing 2 daughters, so that's, I don't know how to, unless maybe Ado had children by somebody else prior to Lot. And that
so maybe, like, yeah, could be.
Maybe these 2 daughters are Lot's only true offspring.
Right, yeah, true. Could very well be. But he delayed, and the men laid hold on his hand, and on the hand of his wife, and on the hand of his 2 daughters, for mercy from the Lord was upon them. And they brought them forth and set them without the city. And it was that as they led them without, one of them returned into Sodom to destroy it. And one remained with Lot and said to him, Be merciful to your life. Look not behind you, and stand not in all the plain. To the mountain escape, or you perish. And Lot said to him, I beseech of thee, endure with me a little hour until I have prayed for mercy from before the Lord. Jerusalem. And it was at the time of the upcoming of the column of the morning. Be steadfast here a little with us until I have besought mercy from before the Lord. Behold, now thy servant hath found mercy before thee, and thou hast multiplied the kindness thou hast done me in saving my life, and I'm not able to escape to the mountain, lest evil overtake me, and I die. Behold, now I pray, this city, it is a near habitation, and convenient for us to escape thither, and it is small, and the guilt thereof light. I will flee thither then. Is it not a little one? And my life shall be preserved. And he said, Behold, I have accepted thee in this matter also, that I will not overthrow the city for which thou hast spoken, to destroy it, that thou mayest escape to it. Hasten and flee thither, for I cannot do anything till thou have entered there. Therefore he called the name of the city Zoar. The sun had passed the sea and come forth upon the earth at the end of 3 hours, and Lot entered into Zoar. And the word of the Lord had caused showers of favor to descend upon Sodom and Gomorrah, to the intent that they might work repentance. But they did it not, so that they said, Wickedness is not manifest before the Lord. Behold then, there are now sent down upon them sulfur and fire from before the word of the Lord from heaven. Jerusalem. And the word of the Lord himself had made to descend upon the people of Sodom and Gomorrah showers of favor, that they might work repentance from their wicked works. But when they saw the showers of favor, they said, So our wicked works are not manifest before him. He turned then and caused to descend upon them bitumen and fire from before the Lord from the heavens. And he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and the herbage of the earth. And his wife looked after the angel to know what would be in the end of her father's house, for she was of the daughters of the Sodomite. And because she sinned by salt, Bamilca, she was manifestly punished. Behold, she was made a statue of salt. Jerusalem. And because the wife of Lot was of the children of the people of Sodom, she looked behind her to see what would be the end of her father's house. And behold, she was made to stand a statue of salt until the time of the resurrection shall come, when the dead shall rise. And Abraham arose in the morning and went to the place where he had ministered in prayer before the Lord. And he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the land of the plain, and saw, and behold, the smoke of the land went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it was when the Lord destroyed the cities of the plain that he remembered the righteousness of Abraham, and sent forth Lot from the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities wherein Lot had dwelt. And Lot went up from Zoar, dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, because he feared to reside in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cavern, he and his 2 daughters. And the elder said to the less, Our father is old, and there is no man in the land to come to us after the way of the whole earth, Jerusalem. And there is not a man in the land who may come with us after the law of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and when he is drunken, we will lie with him, and raise up sons from our father. And they made their father drink wine, and that night, and he was drunk, and the elder arose and lay with her father. Nor did she know when she lay down, nor when she arose, and it was the day following. And the elder said to the less, Behold, now I lay my evening with the father. Let us make him drink wine this night, also that he may be drunk. And go thou and lie with him, that we may raise up sons from our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and he was drunk. And the younger arose and lay with him. And he knew not in her lying down, nor in her rising up. And the 2 daughters of Lot became with child by their father. And the elder brought forth a son, and she called his name Moab, because from her father she had conceived. He is the father of the Moabi unto this day. And the younger also brought forth a son, and she called his name Bar-Ami, because he was the son of her father. He is the father of the Ammonite people unto this day. All right. This is the legends of the patriarchs and the prophets. There's a couple very interesting things in here, so I'll read this. Destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. At noon, on the 15th of Nisan, the 3rd day after the circumcision of Abraham, as recorded in the book of Genesis, the heat of the sun was so great that Gehenna, hell, was penetrated by it, and Abraham had not recovered the administration of the rite which had been performed by the hands of Shem, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God. Abraham was wont every day to go forth and invite any travelers he might see to feast with him. But this day, owing to the heat and to his being in pain, he sent Eleazar his servant forth, who looked and returned, and said that there was no one to be seen. But Abraham thought, Can I trust the words of this slave and neglect for one day the performance of my accustomed hospitality? Then, notwithstanding the heat and the suffering, he went and sat in the shade of the door, and he beheld in the plain of Mamre the glory of the Lord that appeared. Abraham would have risen, but the voice of God called to him, saying, Remain where thou art, and let thy pious sitting posture teach future generations in their prayer and instruction to be seated, and let judges in delivering judgment occupy the same position. And then Abraham lifted his eyes and beheld 3 men who seemed to approach and then to withdraw. These were the angels Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, sent to him with messages, whereof each bore one. They now stood before Abraham's tent, and they came to satisfy his desire to show hospitality. But when they observed the predicament in which he was, they attempted to withdraw, but Abraham supposed them to be travelers of the 3 neighboring races, of Saracens, Nabateans, and Arabians. And as 2 of the angels were smaller of stature than the 3rd, who stood in the middle, this was Michael, Abraham supposed him to be their chief. And he rose and bowed himself before him, and said to the majesty of God, which still shone, If I have found favor in thy sight, O Lord, may thy majesty not depart from me whilst I receive hospitably these wanderers. And the Lord granted his request. Then Abraham said to the men, Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. for there are ye to come to your servant. Now the reason why he said, let a little water be fetched and wash your feet, was that he supposed the men were idolaters, and he would not have the dust from the feet of idolaters to pollute the floor of his tent. And they said, do so. Then Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the earth. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Abraham placed butter and milk on the table first, then calves' tongues, then the other dishes, and lastly Sarah's cakes. But some commentators doubt whether the men ate the cakes. It is asserted by some that the angels only appeared to eat, but by others we are assured that to reward Abraham's hospitality, they really did eat.
Yeah.
That went fast.
This is our 4-week emergency supply food from My Patriot Supply, our new sponsor. So today we're going to unbox it and show you what they sent us. We're facing an uncertain future, my family. The next few weeks will set the tone for the next 4 years. Do you really want to be caught unprepared if things suddenly take a turn for the worst? Well, you don't have to. You can start preparing today so you have enough emergency food, water, and other essentials on hand at all times, no matter what happens. It's best to have at least a 1-month supply of food and water for everyone in your household. You want long-term storage food that lasts up to 25 years, so it's ready whenever you need it. That's why we personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the go-to leaders for emergency preparedness, and they're the best source my family uses and trusts for our preparedness plan, and you should too. Right now, save $100 off a full 4-week supply of nutritious meals that supply 2,000 calories a day, delivered discreetly to your home. Saving $100 is impossible to pass up, especially now. So go to preparewithzengarcia.com and get ready now. That's preparewithzengarcia.com. There's no time to lose. As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where
We're
you
back
can
on the
partake in
Revolutionary Radio
exclusive,
Project. I'm your host,
interactive,
Rob Skiba,
Patreon-only
the second
content,
hour of the
and
broadcast.
help
As
us
usual,
continue
this
shining
is
the light
flying by.
of love in this dark
I'm
world.
joined with my friend and co-host, Zen Garcia. And Zen, what were you reading from?
It's called the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets.
Legends of the Patriarchs and Prophets. Cool.
Yeah.
You can pick up where you left off there.
All right. It is asserted by some that the angels only appeared to eat, but by others we are assured that to reward Abraham's hospitality, they really did eat, and this was the only occasion on which angels tasted the food of the earth. The angels, knowing that Sarah was within the tent, asked after her, and this betokens her great modesty that she did not thrust herself forward to be seen of strange visitors. Abraham replied that she was within, engaged in woman's household work. Then said Michael, the chief of the angels, "Truly shall such pious and seemly habits not pass unrewarded, but Sarah shall bloom again as fair as in her youth, and shall bear a son in her old age." Sarah heard these words at the entrance of the tent. So did Ishmael, who stood near. Sarah stepped behind the angel, but the beauty of her countenance shone before her, and the angel turned to look at her. And then he saw she was laughing to herself, and saying, "I am good looking, and smart dresses become me. I could perfectly well produce a son, but then my husband is old." Then the word of God came to Abraham and said, "Wherefore did Sarah laugh? Am I, the all-powerful God, too old to create miracles? At the appointment time, Sarah shall have a son." To Sarah, who out of fear denied having laughed, the word came, "Fear not, but thou didst laugh." Then Michael withdrew, for his mission was accomplished, and left the other two, Gabriel and Raphael, with Abraham. Then God revealed to Abraham by Gabriel that he was about to destroy the cities of the plain, and by Raphael that he would deliver Lot and his family in the overthrow. These cities were very guilty before God. Eliezer, having been sent by Sarah to her brother Lot with the message some years before, arrived in Sodom. An acquaintance invited him to a meal, but hospitality was a virtue abhorred in Sodom. And the news of the invitation having got wind, Eliezer's friend was driven out of the city. Now it was a custom in Sodom to make every stranger arriving within the walls rest in a certain bed, and if the bed proved too long for him, his legs were pulled out to fit it, and if it proved too short, his legs were pared down to its dimensions. Eliezer saw with horror what it was that they purposed to do with him, and he had recourse to lie of necessity. He declined to sleep in the bed because he had taken an oath upon the death of his mother never to lie on a bed again, and thus he escaped. Shortly after having seen a sodomite rob a poor stranger of his garment, Eliezer attempted to interfere, but the robber struck him over the head and made a gash from which he lost much blood. Both being brought before the judge, this was the magistrate's decision, that Eliezer was indebted to the sodomite robber for having bled him. The servant of Abraham thereupon took up a large stone, flung it at the judge's head, which he cut open and said, "Now pay me for having bled thee." And then he fled out of the city. From these incidents, it may be seen how wicked the city was. Now Abraham had interceded with God to spare the cities of the plain, for the intercession of his saints is mighty with God. And Abraham obtained of God that if in Zoar, the smallest of the cities, 5 righteous could be found, and 45 in all the rest of the country, God would spare them. Then God ceased talking with Abraham. Next morning, early, Abraham arose, took his staff, and went to the place where God had met him, to make further intercession for the cities of the plain. But the smoke of them rose as from a furnace, for brimstone and fire had been rained upon them out of heaven, and they had been consumed along with their inhabitants. Only Zoar was spared as a place of refuge for Lot, and Lot was kept alive and his daughters. For God remembered how he had been true to Abraham in Egypt, and had not betrayed the truth about Sarah when questioned by Pharaoh. The Muslim tradition is as follows. Lot, whom the Arabs called Loth, was sent by God as a prophet to convince the inhabitants of the cities of the plain of their ungodly deeds. But though he preached for 20 years, he could not convince them. And whenever he visited Abraham, he complained to him of the iniquity of the people. But Abraham urged him to patience. At length, the long suffering of God was exhausted, and he sent the angels Michael, Gabriel, and Azrael, armed with the sword of destruction against these cities. They came to Abraham, who received them, and slaughtered a calf and prepared meat and set it before them. But they would not eat, and he pressed them, and he ate himself. But they would not eat, being angels. Then Abraham's color went, and he was afraid. For to refuse to eat with a man is a token that you seek his life. Seeing him discouraged, the angels announced their mission. But Sarah, observing her husband's loss of color, laughed and said in her heart, "Why is he fearful, being surrounded with many servants and faithful friends?" Now the angels promised Abraham a son in his old age, and that they would rescue Lot in the overthrow of Sodom. Then they rose up and went in their way and entered into Sodom, and they met a young maiden in the street and asked her the way to Lot's house. She answered, "He is my father, and I dwell with him. But know you not, O strangers, that it is against the laws of this city to show hospitality?" But they answered her, "Fear not, lead us to thy father." So she led them and ran before and told Lot, "Behold, 3 men come seeking thee and asking shelter, and they are beautiful as the angels of God." Then Lot went out to them and told them that the city was full of wickedness and that hospitality was not permitted. But they answered, "We must tarry this night in thy house." Then he admitted them and he hid them. But Lot's wife was an infidel, a native of Sodom, and finding that he lodged these strangers, she hastened to the chief men of the city and said, "My husband has violated your laws and the customs of this people. He has housed travelers and will feed them and show them all courtesy." Therefore, the men of the city came tumultuously to the doors of Lot's house to bring forth the men that were come to him and to cast them out of the city. Having shamefully entreated them, they would not listen to the remonstrances of Lot, but went near to break in his door. And then the 3 angels stepped forth and passed their hands over the faces of all who drew near, and they were struck blind and fled from their presence. Now, long before the day began to break, the angels rose up and called Lot, his wife and daughters, and bade them take their clothes and all that they had that was most precious and escape out of the city. And therefore Lot and his family went forth. And when they were escaped, the angel Gabriel went through the cities and passed his wing over the soil on which they were built, and the cities were carried up into heaven. And they came so near thereto that those on the confines of heaven could hear the crowing of the cocks in Sodom and the barking of the dogs in Gomorrah. And then they were overthrown, so that their foundations were towards the sky and their roofs towards the earth. Then God rained on them stones heated in the fire of hell, and on each stone was written the name of him whom it was destined to slay. Now there were many natives of these accursed cities in other parts of the land, and where they were sought out by the red-hot stones and were struck down. But some were within the sacred enclosure of the temple at Mecca, and the stones waited for them in the air, and at the expiration of 40 days they came forth, and as they came forth the stones whistled through the air and smote them, and they were slain. Now Lot's wife turned, and as she went forth to look back upon the city, and a stone fell on her, and she died. It is related further of Lot that after he had escaped, he committed in ignorance a very great sin, and Abraham sent him to expiate his crime to the sources of the Nile, to fetch thence 3 sorts of wood, which he named to him. Abraham thought, he will be slain by ravenous beasts, and so will he atone for the sin that he has committed. But Lot after a while returned, bringing with him the woods which Abraham had demanded, a cypress plant, a young cedar, and a young pine. Abraham planted the 3 trees in the shape of a triangle on a mountain and charged Lot with watering them every day from Jordan. Now the mountain was 24,000 paces from Jordan, and this penance was laid on Lot to expiate his sin. At the end of 3 months, the trees blossomed. Lot announced this to Abraham, who visited the spot, and saw to his surprise that the 3 trees had grown together to form one trunk, but with 3 distinct roots of different natures. At the sight of this miracle, he bowed his face to the ground and said, "This tree will abolish sin." And by that he knew that God had pardoned Lot. The tree grew and subsisted till the reign of Solomon, when it was cut down, and this was the tree which the Jews employed to form the cross of Christ. This tradition is, of course, Christian, though Jewish in origin. It has been adopted to the gospel story.
What tree was that?
I'm not sure if there was a specific name, but it just said that the tree that grew on that hill away from the river Jordan. The tree grew and subsisted till the reign of Solomon, when it was cut down, and this was the tree which the Jews employed to form the cross of Christ.
Man, there's a lot of interesting stuff in what you read here.
Yeah, this one actually made mention of his wife being the one that tattletaled on him as well. But there is mention of that in other places as well.
Well, yeah, this appears to be sort of like Ginsburg's,
yes,
an accumulation of stories from various texts. It was interesting, though, that it talked about the 3 angels again being Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael.
Raphael, yeah.
And that Michael was the tallest of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of cool. But at one point, it switched, and they had Azrael in there.
Right. Yeah, the second story.
So it was Michael. Who else was? It was
Gabriel and Azrael.
It was Gabriel and Azrael.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking up in the Dictionary of Angels by Gustav Davidson under Azrael, and it appears that that's a name that's either associated with Gabriel or Raphael. Perhaps.
Oh, really? Huh.
When they take on a different mission, perhaps. I mean, we know the names. I think the names are often job descriptions.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll just read this. It's just a paragraph here on Azrael. In Hebrew and Islamic lore, the angel of death, stationed in the 3rd heaven. To the Muslims, Azrael is another form of Raphael. So is that what it said? Did it say Michael, Gabriel, and Azrael?
Let me check again just to be sure.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was Michael, Gabriel, and Azrael, or Michael, Raphael. And
at the very
it was like at the beginning of one of those chapters, or one of those paragraphs, I think.
Yeah.
Like at the top of the page, I think.
Oh, here.
Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. No.
Yeah, this is the first story. I must have skipped it. Go down. Oh, here it is. The Musulman tradition. All right. Yeah, the angels Michael, Gabriel, and Azrael. So yeah, Azrael is Raphael.
And that said that was the Muslim tradition?
Yeah, the Musulman tradition.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the same as Muslim.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Musulman
tradition.
So yeah, this says in this text right here, it says to the Muslims, Azrael is another form of Raphael.
Raphael, that would make sense.
So, yeah, okay, let me hold that right there. Screen sharing again. Okay, at length, the long suffering of God was exhausted, and he sent the angels Michael, Gabriel, and Azrael. So it appears that Raphael, who can be a healer, can also be a destroyer.
Right.
And we see in Enoch that it was Raphael that was in charge of capturing and binding Azazel,
Yes.
who was the worst of the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, and I guess he when he takes on the battle mission, changes to Azrael. To the Muslim, Azrael is another form of Raphael. In their tradition, he has 70,000 feet and 4,000 wings. Well, that's pretty huge. While his body is provided with as many eyes and tongues as there are men in the world. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics is where that quote is from, I guess. In Arabic tradition, Azrael is forever writing in a large book and forever erasing what he writes. What he writes is the birth of a man. What he erases is the name of the man at death. When Michael, Gabriel, and Israfel failed to provide 7 handfuls of earth for the creation of Adam, the 4th angel on this mission, Azrael, succeeded. And because of this feat, he was appointed to separate body from soul. That's according to Murdad, the Angelus Mortis in ancient Persian lore. Oriental legend has it that Azrael accomplishes his mission, i.e. bringing forth death first and separation afterward, by holding an apple from the tree of life to the nostrils of the dying person. In Jewish mysticism, Azrael is the embodiment of evil. In the Book of Protection, he is one of 3 holy angels, and the other 2 being Gabriel and Michael, which we just saw here, invoked in Syriac charms. He is the angel of death in Longfellow's poem, The Spanish Jew's Tale, and in the popular edition of the complete poetic works of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he is pictorially represented with King Solomon entering a Raja of Hindustan. Interesting tidbits there. And for those who are comic book fans, DC Comic, he was the guy who took over for Batman when Bane broke his back. Useless piece of trivia bouncing off my head from the early 90s. All right.
Well, I've got 2 others that I can read, or one of them, or
yeah, go for it.
All right, this the writings of Abraham, which gives that first person account. This is the account which Lot told unto me, Abraham, concerning the coming of the 3 messengers unto him in Sodom. For Lot was sitting in the door of his house in the city of Sodom, conversing with 2 of his sons-in-law, who were Sodomites, when he saw 3 men approaching down the street of the city. And the Spirit of the Lord whispered unto Lot, Behold, these are my messengers, who bring tidings of salvation. Lot therefore rose up to meet them, and bowing down before them said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, that I may wash your feet, and anoint your heads, and feed you. In the morning you may go on, leaving only a blessing upon the head of your servant. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street tonight, for we have heard that it is not safe to enter into the house of a Sodomite, lest we be abused and tortured and killed, and our property stolen from us. But Lot replied, Not so, my lords, for I am no Sodomite, but a true worshipper of the Lord Jehovah, and I know that ye are his messengers, for his Spirit hath shown me this thing. Then when Lot had confessed his faith in the Lord Jehovah, the angels entered with him into his house, and he did set before them a feast with unleavened bread and wine, and they blessed it and partook thereof, and Lot's family also partook and were filled. When Lot's 2 sons-in-law saw him take the strangers into his home, they went straightway unto the magistrates of the city, for it was unlawful in the city of Sodom to entertain the stranger in your house. Wherefore the people of Sodom surrounded Lot's house, both young and old, all the people of the city. And one of them called to Lot and said, Where are the men whom thou tookest into thy house tonight? Behold, thou knowest that it is contrary to our laws to thus entertain strangers. Nevertheless, we will forgive thee, for thou art a mighty prince among us. Therefore, bring forth the men unto us, that we may lie with them, and do unto them according to all the desires of our hearts. But Lot went out the door to the front of his house, and securing the door behind him, he confronted the Sodomites And Lot said to them, I pray you, my brethren, do not these wicked things, for it is contrary to the law of the Most High God, who is king over all, to force anyone to lie with another. Repent now, therefore, that the wrath of the Most High God fall not upon you, and ye with your city be destroyed. But they were angry with Lot, and they cried unto him, Stand away from the door, lest we take thee also. Thou hast come in among us, and partaken of the good of our land, and we have treated thee with honor, although thou wast a stranger. Dost thou now make thyself a judge over us? And their anger increased against Lot, and they said unto him, Behold, we will deal worse with thee than with them. Wherefore we shall take thee and thy daughters, and the men who have come in unto thee, and any others in thine household who shall please us, and we will do with you according to all our desires. But Lot replied, Behold now, I have 2 daughters, who have not lain with man. Let me, I pray you, plead with you, that ye take them not according to this wickedness, and abuse them according to your abominations. For the Most High God will surely destroy this city if ye repent not. Wherefore ye shall do nothing unto me, nor my daughters, nor the strangers that are within my gate, nor any of mine household, for God will smite you in the attempt. And their anger increased yet more against Lot, and they came near to break down the door. But the messengers of God, who were holy men, bearing the power of the priesthood, after God's holy order, put forth their hands, pulled Lot into the house, and shut the door behind them. Then they smote the people of Sodom with blindness, so that they could not find the door. And one of these holy men said unto Lot, Take now all that appertaineth unto thee, whether persons or goods, out of this city, for the wrath of God is upon this place, and tomorrow it shall be destroyed. Because the cries of those who have been abused here have risen unto the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, and the abominations of the Sodomites have come up before his face. Wherefore, surely upon the morrow the vengeance of the Lord shall fall upon Sodom, that neither root nor branch shall be left here. For the fullness of their iniquity hath come upon them, and in the fullness thereof they shall be cut off. Therefore Lot went forth at that time, spake unto his sons-in-law, and his married daughters, and all who had gone forth with him from our camp, saying, Up, get ye out of the place, for on the morrow the Lord will destroy this city. But his words were as foolishness unto them, and they mocked him. And Lot returned unto his house in sorrow. So yeah, his married daughters didn't follow. When morning came, the men of God hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wives and thy daughters who are here with thee in the house, and depart hence, lest ye be consumed by the wrath of God, which shall be visited upon the iniquities of Sodom. And while they were preparing to depart, Lot's heart being full of sorrow at leaving his daughters and his daughters' children to be destroyed, the men of God took him by the hand with his wives and his daughters. For the Lord had mercy upon Lot because of his integrity, because he had not bowed down unto false gods, nor entered into the abominations of Sodom. And Lot thought to dwell in Zoar, wherefore he hastened there. But his wife Addo turned back into the city of Sodom. Addo was the daughter of Eli, the son of Eleazar, which Eli had accompanied Lot to Sodom. And Addo thought upon her parents and her daughters who remained in the city. Her heart was pained within her, and she turned back unto them, and was lost. But Lot entered with the rest of his family into Zoar, and was there when the cities of the plains were overthrown. Then the 3 holy men of God came unto me, Abraham, where I was fasting and praying nigh unto Sodom. They lifted me up into the heavens and taught me the ordinances, the key words, and the things by which I might call down fire and brimstone upon the cities. And I did as I was commanded by the angels of God, and the cities were destroyed. And when I saw the destruction of the land, mine heart was sorrowful. But the Lord said unto me, I have had mercy upon Lot, and have sent him out of the city, that he was not destroyed. for he was the only righteous man in all the cities. Wherefore mine heart was comforted. I'll read one more chapter.
So that one talked about Ado again having other daughters.
Right. And it also mentioned that he went to his sons-in-law's house and spoke to them and his two daughters that were married. But then they would not leave with him or to depart out of the city. They thought his words were foolishness. And so when he goes back to his house, the angels say, leave now with your wife and the daughters that are with you.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, those were the two daughters that were not married and still living with him because I guess they were young and unmarried.
Mystery solved. So we have
Yes.
4 daughters of Lot total. 2 are married.
Right.
And out and about with their sons-in-law. And
yes, living with them.
This is our 4-week emergency supply food from My Patriot Supply, our new sponsor. So today we're going to unbox it and show you what they sent us. We're facing an uncertain future, my family. The next few weeks will set the tone for the next 4 years. Do you really want to be caught unprepared if things suddenly take a turn for the worst? Well, you don't have to. You can start preparing today so you have enough emergency food, water, and other essentials on hand at all times, no matter what happens. It's best to have at least a 1-month supply of food and water for everyone in your household. You want long-term storage food that lasts up to 25 years, so it's ready whenever you need it. That's why we personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the go-to leaders for emergency preparedness, and they're the best source my family uses and trusts for our preparedness plan, and you should too. Right now, save $100 off a full 4-week supply of nutritious meals that supply 2,000 calories a day, delivered discreetly to your home. Saving $100 isn't possible to pass up, especially now. So go to preparewithzengarcia.com and get ready now. That's preparewithzengarcia.com. There's no time to lose. As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we're in the final half-hour segment of the broadcast. Wow, this one's flying by. Just so fast. Were you going to continue where you left off there?
Yeah, I've got one more account I'm going to read. This one is from the Legends of the Jews.
Cool.
And it's pertaining to the same kind of episode, but it gives, different introspection in the story that we're following. So I'll just read this. The angels left Abraham at noontime, and they reached Sodom at the approach of evening. As a rule, angels proclaim their errand with the swiftness of lightning, but these were angels of mercy, and they hesitated to execute their work of destruction, ever hoping that the evil would be turned aside from Sodom. With nightfall, the fate of Sodom was sealed irrevocably, and the angels arrived there. Bred in the house of Abraham, Lot had learnt from him the beautiful custom of extending hospitality, and when he saw the angels before him in human form, thinking they were wayfarers, he bade them to turn aside and tarry all night in his house. But as the entertainment of strangers was forbidden in Sodom on penalty of death, he dared invite them only under cover of the darkness of night, and even then he had to use every manner of precaution, bidding the angels to follow him by devious ways. The angels who had accepted Abraham's hospitality without delay first refused to comply with Lot's request, for it is a rule of good breeding to show reluctance when an ordinary man invites one, but to accept the invitation of a great man at once. Lot, however, was insistent, and carried them into his house by main force. At home, he had to overcome the opposition of his wife, for she said, "If the inhabitants of Sodom hear of this, they will slay thee." Lot divided his dwelling into two parts, one for himself and his guests, the other for his wife, so that if aught happened, his wife would be spared. Nevertheless, it was she who betrayed him. She went to a neighbor and borrowed some salt, and to the question whether she could not have supplied herself with salt during daylight hours, she replied, "We had enough salt until some guests came to us. For them we needed more." In this way, the presence of strangers was bruited abroad in the city. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's by salt that she...
The judgment meets the crime, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. In the beginning, the angels were inclined to hearken to the petition of Lot in behalf of the sinners. But when all the people of the city, big and little, crowded around the house of Lot, with the purpose of committing a monstrous crime, the angels warded off his prayers, saying, "Hitherto thou couldst intercede for them, but now no longer." It was not the first time that the inhabitants of Sodom wanted to perpetrate a crime of this sort. They had made a law some time before that all strangers were to be treated in this horrible way. Lot, who was appointed chief judge on the very day of the angels' coming, tried to induce the people to desist from their purpose, saying to them, "My brethren, the generation of the deluge was extirpated in consequence of such sins as you desire to commit, and you would revert to them?" But they replied back, "And though Abraham himself came hither, we should have no consideration for him. Is it possible that thou wouldst set aside a law which thy predecessors administered?" Even Lot's moral sense was no better than it should have been. It is the duty of a man to venture his life for the honor of his wife and his daughters, but Lot was ready to sacrifice the honor of his daughters, wheretofore he was punished severely later on. The angels told Lot who they were and what their mission that had brought them to Sodom, and they charged him to flee from the city with his wife and his 4 daughters, 2 of them married and 2 betrothed. There you go. Lot communicated with their bidden to his sons-in-law, and they mocked at him and said, "Oh, thou fool, Violins, cymbals, and flutes resound in the city, and thou sayest Sodom will be destroyed? Such scoffing but hasten the execution of the doom of Sodom. The angel Michael laid hold upon the hand of Lot and his wife and his daughters, while his little finger, the angel Gabriel, touched the rock whereon the sinful cities were built and overturned them. At the same time, the rain that was streaming down upon the two cities was changed into brimstone. When the angels had brought forth Lot and his family and set them without the city, he bade them run for their lives and not look behind, lest they behold the Shekinah which had descended to work the destruction of the cities. The wife of Lot could not control herself. Her mother love made her look behind to see if her married daughters were following. She beheld the Shekinah, and she became a pillar of salt. This pillar exists unto this day. The cattle lick it all day long, and in the evening it seems to have disappeared. But when morning comes, it stands there as large as before. The Savior angel had urged Lot himself to take refuge with Abraham, but he refused and said, as long as I dwelt apart from Abraham, God compared my deeds with the deeds of my fellow citizens, and among them I appeared as a righteous man. If I should return to Abraham, God will see that his good deeds outweigh mine by far. The angel then granted his plea that Zoar be left undestroyed. This city had been founded a year later than the other four. It was only 51 years old, and therefore the measure of its sins was not so full as the measure of the sins of the neighboring cities. The destruction of the cities of the plain took place at dawn on the 16th day of Nisan, for the reason that there were moon and sun worshippers among the inhabitants. God said, if I destroy them by day, the moon worshippers will say, were the moon here, she would have proved herself our Savior. And if I destroy them by night, the sun worshippers will say, were the sun here, he would prove himself our Savior. I will therefore let their chastisement overtake them on the 16th day of Nisan at an hour which the moon and the sun are both in the skies.
Huh.
That's
awesome.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. The sinful inhabitants of the cities of the plain not only lost their life in this world, but also their share in the future world. As for the cities themselves, however, they will be restored in the Messianic time. The destruction of Sodom happened at the time which Abraham was performing his morning devotions, and for his sake it was established as the proper hour for the morning prayer unto all times. When he turned his eyes towards Sodom and beheld the rising smoke, he prayed for the deliverance of Lot, and God granted his petition. The fourth time that Lot became deeply indebted to Abraham, Abraham had taken him with him to Palestine. He had made him rich in flocks, herds, and tents, and he had rescued him from captivity. And by his prayer he saved him from the destruction of Sodom. The descendants of Lot, the Ammonites and the Moabites, instead of showing gratitude to the Israelites, the posterity of Abraham, committed 4 acts of hostility against them. They sought to compass the destruction of Israel by means of Balaam's curses. They waged open war against him at the time of Jephthah, and also at the time of Jehoshaphat. And finally, they manifested their hatred against Israel at the destruction of the temple. That's right, it was the Moabites that destroyed it. The Babylonians were trying to hold them back. Or it was one of those, yeah. Hence it is that God appointed 4 prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Zephaniah, to proclaim punishment unto the descendants of Lot, and 4 times their sin is recorded in Holy Writ. Though Lot owed his deliverance to the petition of Abraham, yet it was at the same time his reward for not having betrayed Abraham in Egypt when he pretended to be the brother of Sarah. But a greater reward still awaits him. The Messiah will be a descendant of his, for the Moabitess Ruth is the great-grandmother of David, and the Ammonitess Naamah is the mother of Rehoboam, and the Messiah is of the line of these 2 kings.
Wow, that's in the Legend of the Jews.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's interesting. Oh, it's interesting to me that in the story before the writings of Abraham, it seems that Lot actually has a spine and speaks up for his family and his daughters and himself. But in this, the Legends of the Jews, it says that, because he did offer up his daughters, he would receive punishment later because of that.
Yeah.
And so, those are all very fascinating details.
And the pillar of salt, I always wondered about that. Like it just seems so random to me.
Right.
But now, the
Connection.
The punishment meets the crime.
Right.
She went to go buy salt. In the process, she's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, my husband, he's got company over here."
Right.
Everybody's like, "What?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she betrayed them, and because it was in one of the other stories that was mentioned, but that detail wasn't brought forth.
Right.
But in this account, it did bring that forth. So I'm glad it did. And that's, another reason why we should read all the parallel accounts so that we get details like that in one of the stories, at least.
Yeah. And depending on when that was written, whatever time period that text was written, it said that the pillar is still there to that day.
Right.
I don't know if it's still around to this day today.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that I don't agree with all of the findings that Ron Wyatt is credited with, but the one with Sodom and Gomorrah is pardon the pun, pretty rock solid. It's I actually met his one of his partners, Richard Reeves, was at a Sukkot a few years back, and he gave everybody some actual brimstone from Sodom and Gomorrah. So
right on.
I got a bunch of pieces. Kind of a funny story. Some of my listeners have heard it before, but since we're talking about this story here, he gave me a whole bunch of that brimstone, and it's crazy. That stuff's just like really wild. I mean, how it burns so hot, but it looks like a powdered donut. That's what that's what it looks like. And my parents are both Bible scholars and teach Sunday school level and college level courses. And so I sent Mom and Dad a nice letter and saying, hey, this is actual, brimstone from Sodom and Gomorrah, and sent them some books by Richard Reeves and some other stuff. And anyway, my mom opened the package. Oh, cool. Robbie sent us some stuff, and she saw a Ziploc bag that looked like it had powdered donuts in it. So she's just reading through stuff, and she grabs one and pops it in her mouth. And she's like, what is this? She's like, this is horrible. And then she keeps reading. Oh, this is authentic brimstone from Sodom and Gomorrah that she just put in her mouth. She's like, she spent the rest of the day washing her mouth out.
Right. That stuff can't taste good.
No,
sulfur is so nasty.
She said it was, but to be fair, I mean, it did in the Ziploc bag. It did look like powdered donuts or something, but she she didn't even read it until after she had already eaten it. But it's some pretty wild stuff, and if people just do a Google search on Ron Wyatt and Sodom and Gomorrah, and actually in the Torah portion for that week. That talks about that. If you go to Virtual House Church, you can see all kinds of pictures and stuff written up on that. And to this day, I mean, it's still, some of the structures actually look like buildings. They got 90-degree angles and stuff like that, and it must have been like, wow, quite the thing to see.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, you would have thought it was the end of the world.
Yeah. In that one of the texts that you read, it actually said the angels did eat.
Yeah. Right.
Somewhere.
And that was the only time. Yeah.
Some say, well, actually, one of the texts you're right. They're like, well, some say they did and some say they didn't. But
right. Yeah, and then other texts it says that they gave the appearance of them eating, and so it's up in the air as to whether they did or didn't. But certainly in some of the stories it was made, even if they didn't, that they appeared to. But then in others, I guess they interpreted the appearance as they did. So
Yeah. I was looking at during one of the breaks, the spider web deal. I didn't see it in scripture. Is that something in another? Maybe I just missed it. I just did a keyword search for spider and spider web, and the Bible didn't show anything. Is it in a Torah, something?
It's in a book called "And It Came to Pass," I believe it is. It's a book where I remember reading it. It's in a book of stories from David and Solomon.
Oh,
I believe it's called "And It Comes to Pass." But yeah, it's a fascinating, because remember the story of the lion men of Moab
right. Yeah, yeah.
that I read? That was also in that particular manuscript.
So yeah, speaking of that, so we saw that the sons from the incest that Lot's daughters and his dad and their dad, they produced the Ammonites and the Moabites, and those sons later moved into the land of Canaan and married Canaanites. And so, I've maintained all along that in the days of Jared, you had angel-human hybrids, Nephilim. Those were angels mated with women in the days of Jared. You had angel-human hybrids, and those were all judged and killed and everything within about 700 years before the flood of Noah. So in the last 120 years leading up to the flood, you had a different breed, in my mind anyway, a different variety of Nephilim, and that was animal-human hybrids.
Uh-huh.
And I maintain that anytime you corrupt the image, whatever the image is, be it man or beast, from what God created and called good after their own kind, when you start blending stuff into things that aren't a kind that God blessed and called good, that in my mind, that's just as Nephilim as angel-human Nephilims are. And so the Nephilim that made it through the flood would have been, at least according to the research that I've done, would be animal-human hybrids, which would then make sense that the lion men of Moab would be Moabite Canaanite hybrid, and Canaanite being animal-human hybrids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all of that in the Berosus. Remember, he makes that account of all the different hybrids, and they were majority human, animal, half, even some being centaur and half horse, half man, half serpent, like the founder of Athens, Cecrops. He was said to be like a Medusa or like a Gorgon, serpentine below, and then and to be a man in his upper portion. So there's all kind of strange. And you made mention of that story in Jasher of Zepho killing that Minotaur type.
It was a satyr.
Yeah, satyr type creature. So there's all kind of weirdness associated. And we see all this as scriptural too. Again. Oh, and I did find the name of that book for those that are interested. It's called "And It Came to Pass: The Legends and Stories About King David and King Solomon," which I do recommend people read it, because it's fascinating. It even makes mention of one of the brothers of Goliath and their grandmother Orpah and all of that. So it's a fascinating, and the lion men of Moab and all that.
And it came to pass, legends of. Let me just switch that over here. Oh, cool, man! Might be one I have to pick up.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool book to read.
Something else we only got about 7 minutes left of the broadcast. It talked about the Savior angel. So do you think that's just the saying the angel that saved Lot, or do you think it's a pre-incarnate Yeshua being referred to there?
It's hard to tell, but I would think that salvation and Savior, that in some way there's inference to the word of the Lord. And we do see that in many of these accounts that it is him directly as being mentioned in interaction with, and establishing covenant, even with Abraham, covenants made in the name of the word of the Lord and things of that nature. And so I definitely think that Yahushua was around a lot more. And especially when you look at Like, for instance, we're releasing the Targum version of the book of Isaiah, and there's a whole lot. In the same way that in the Pentateuch, there's 219 passages which speak about the word of the Lord, and yet in the King James, there's only 11 translations of that survive. And so there's a lot of reference to Yahushua in these ancient manuscripts. And when you read the Targum, you have that revealed. Like, even when I read the Targum earlier, there's the mention of the word of the Lord, that he was the one that rained down destruction on Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities of the plain. And so, I think he was involved in that. When you have mentioned, even, we talked about the angel of the Lord, that one particular reference, and how it came out and said specifically that this was Christ before he took on embodiment. I think that there's a lot of interaction and a lot of incidents which he is responsible for having accomplished that he's not giving credit to, because we don't understand that in the ancient manuscripts that's who is actually being alluded to, because of whether it's on purpose or accidental. The translations have been altered, and the word of the Lord being removed and made only Lord. And I personally think that, there's some deviousness behind it, and that they're trying to hide Christ as being the fulfillment, and also, as you said, the pre-incarnate aspect of the Godhead and involvement and interacting with the patriarchs of old, the prophets of old, up until even, Adam's time and Abraham's time, and on and on and on.
Yeah. I did notice that it mentioned in one of those, I guess it was maybe the Targum, talk about the word of the Lord first showered favor on them, like
right,
showing
for
mercy.
repentance, yes.
And then afterwards, like, okay,
no more, yes.
And that when we talked about it in the previous show, that Michael's assignment was to announce that Sarah would conceive and have a child. And then it says the word of the Lord appeared. Mike noticed that she laughed, and then after that, it was sort of like Yeshua showed up and said, "Okay, Mike, I got this."
Yeah.
And Michael, moves over, and then the dialogue after that is the Lord and God and etc. That is that. So you had the three angels appeared, but then you have the word of the Lord appearing,
right,
as a fourth.
And then she denies laughing. And he said, "No, Sarah, you did laugh."
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
But Isaac's name means laughter, and it was
yes, exactly. Right.
The tablets.
One last thing I wanted to bring forth is I saw a talk that Ken Johnson had done earlier about the Dead Sea Scrolls and some of the manuscripts that were found therein, and he was talking about the testament of the 12 patriarchs, and how that particular manuscript, everybody had thought that it had been altered, and that it was Christianized or made, changed and altered, because it makes mention of Christ and the prophecies that are contained within this manuscript. But then confirmation of it being found as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls collection shows that these were messianic prophecies, and that they were known and written into the manuscripts before the coming of Christ. Wow. And so, those are things that are affirmed, like the Book of Enoch, talking about the Son of Man. So I thought that was very interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, very cool. Dr. Johnson has a lot of good stuff like that when it comes to a collection of ancient texts and things like that.
Yeah. In the Legends of the Jews, it actually makes mention of how the testament of the 12 patriarchs, that they are messianic and they speak about Messiah. And so, these things are going back to even the rabbinical commentaries. They knew without a doubt that Yahushua was Savior Messiah, but it had been hidden, and it is still, unfortunately, hidden so well today that the people, the nation as a whole, deny him and his coming, which is unfortunate.
Was Ginsburg a believer? Do you know?
I'm not sure at all. Not positive. I know he was Jewish. He was, he was a Jew. Ginsburg, the last name is Jewish, and so whether he was a believer or not, I would think that he would be, especially after putting together the legends of the Jews, because without a doubt they show prophetically that Christ, Yahushua was the coming of the Messiah and the fulfillment of not only the Isaiah but all the other Old Testament prophecies. So I would think that he would be, and if not, then he's just stubborn.
Willfully ignorant, stiff-necked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but
cool.
that would be interesting to find out.
Yeah, it would. Well, all right. That's it for tonight's show. Thanks so much, Zen. We'll see you on your show next week.
All right, brother. Be blessed. Good night, all. Shalom.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.